Okay, there we are.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
So we're back to the Bodhicharyavatara, chapter 6, resuming at verse 34. So I will read it out, and then let me just cancel this one. Read it out, and then I'll call it up on screen. Let me get the... I lost my text. Oh yeah, got it. Yadi tu swechaya siddhi sarveshamev dehinam न भवेत् कस्यचित् दुःखं न दुःखं कश्चिदिच्छति. Read it once more then. यदि तु स्वेच्छया सिद्धि सर्वेषामेव देहिनां न भवेत् कस्यचित् दुःखं न दुःखं कश्चिदिच्छति. This ichati at the end, the verb ichati, desires, from that same root is ichcha, so swechaya, that's swa ichaya, by one's own wish. I just call up the iPad. What's happening? Compatibility. Hold up my notability function, and all it gives me is some complicated things, all the things I can do with it. But the one thing it won't let me do is just call up. Okay, here we are, got it. Nearly with you. There we are. It is the root ish.
Could you share your notepad?
Can we see the iPad, please?
Sorry. Oh, had I shared screen?
No, I was going to remind you. Yeah.
Thank you. This is screen share. Is it shared now?
The iPad, yes.
iPad, yes. Okay, great. Thank you. So this root ish, it's very slightly irregular, only a tiny bit, because it makes its present. I think I need to get a new iPad, or a new pen, I don't know. So, just not writing properly. Let's try further down the screen. Ichati. You'd expect something like eshati, but in fact you get the present tense is ichati. In fact, it also makes a present tense in eshati, but with a slightly different meaning. So ish means to want. It also means to seek. And you can see why those two verbs closely overlap in meaning. You want something to seek something. In the present tense, it has these two forms, ichati or eshati. Ichati tends to mean the meaning of to want, whereas ishati tends to have the meaning of to seek, but they're both from that same root. And a bit of etymology here. For those of you who are familiar with any of the Slavonic languages, the Russian for to seek is iskat. It's the root isk and ich. But closer to home, this ish turns up in English as wish, you see. So ish and wish, it's that originally it was that it's the same word. So ichati, wishes. And it makes a verbal noun, itcha, meaning a wish, a want, a desire. And that's what we have in this verse. So I'll call the screen back up if you want to see it to make notes. In this verse, we have both. We have icheti, wants, and we have swa ichaya, by Santi swechaya, means by one's own wanting, by one's own wishing. In other words, simply by wishing it out of yourself. Yaditu, if, however, but if, swechaya, by one's instrumental of cause, by one's own wishing. Siddhi, there were accomplishment, success, achievement, sarvesham eva dehinam, for all beings. So sarvesham, genitive plural of sarva. Remember, it's the pronominal declension, so the genitive plural is not sarvanam, but sarvesham, just as of them is tesham, not tana, tesham. Sarvesham, okay, sarvesham dehinam would mean of all embodied beings. The eva here, it's the emphatic eva, suggests here, it emphasizes without any exception. Sarvesham eva, all without exception. Dehin we've had before. It's in fact it's a word that occurs very frequently in the Bhagavad Gita, and it occurs more frequently in the Bhagavad Gita than in the Bodhicharya Avatara. And it's from the word deha, meaning a body. So a dehin is a being that has a body, an embodied being. So the use of the word dehin, so deha is a body, the use of the word dehin for a being suggests there, and the structure of the word itself suggests that when we're talking about living beings, we're talking about beings that have a body. So in other words, it's an emphasis that we are not the body, but we are spiritual beings inhabiting a body. So that's what lies behind this dehin. Let me just go through the various words for body. So we've got deha, we have sharira. Sorry, my pen is playing up a bit. Let's go down the page. Try again. So if this goes on playing up, I'll just have to resort to my manual.
Can you check? Is that philosophically and religion? Is that the way it was seen in this era that we're spiritual beings embodying a body? Because that certainly wouldn't be the Buddhist view, would it?
It wouldn't actually know, but remember, this is Shantideva writing
Yeah.
about a Mahayanis writing about 1,000 years after the Buddha. Maybe I was just speaking rather loosely, the spiritual beings, that they're entities that inhabit a body.
Ah,
Um,
that doesn't sound right.
Now, that, of course, very much is in the Hindu tradition. I mean,
Yeah.
there is this
Isn't it literally just body possessors? I mean, it's just living beings of all kinds, isn't it? Not just humans.
a possessor of a body, yes, or somebody, yeah, a possessor of a body. Um, you're right, Paladin, in that in theory it ought to be able to apply for all kind of sentient beings that have a body.
Without
But
any implication of a soul at all.
however, I don't think that I do not recall ever having seen it used for any embodied beings other than human beings. I,
I read embodied soul. Can we translate it by embodied soul?
okay, you could, yes. So where have you seen that translation,
In the
Madeleine?
Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita.
In the Bhagavad Gita, yes.
Yeah, very currently, very often.
Okay,
They say
fine.
that the soul has a body, entered a body.
Yeah.
I found it very often in almost many verses of the
Okay, fine, yeah.
Bhagavad Gita.
It's very commonly used in the Bhagavad Gita, and in the Bhagavad Gita, it is much more explicit. And for
Yeah.
instance, when I was brought up as a Roman Catholic, the idea was bodies have souls. Hmm? We have souls, whereas it's the other way around for the Hindus. It's kind of souls have bodies. The soul, okay, the soul, a bit of a controversial word, but you know what I mean. But the soul will transmigrate, and it's the soul that will come back and take temporary bodies. And there's the verse, I think we're coming to it quite soon, actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, where the body is described as clothes, and you have new clothes, just as the soul comes back into a new body. They get worn out, and the old clothes get cast off, and you get new clothes. And it's the same process. In overall, generally, I know, very broad statement, but generally in schools of Hinduism, they're much happier with the idea of a soul. The jiva is one of the words for it. In Buddhism, again, I always feel slightly nervous here. As I've said before, I'm happy to pontificate to you on matters of language, but not quite so happy to pontificate on matters of Dhamma, which is not my function here anyway. So, there is the idea of the subtle body. I mean, there is kind of something. I mean, there's got to be something. I mean, the doctrine of rebirth is very well established. Exactly.
But the doctrine of rebirth in Buddhist terms is not the rebirth of a soul, is it? It's to do with the skandhas. There's no thing that is reborn, but a continuation of process.
It's the process, yes.
And the body is part of that process. The establishment of what appears to be and what we experience as a physical body is simply part of that process, which is not two separate things. But that's what I was trying to check, really. But in Hinduism, it's different. Is it that you've got a clear concept? Is that the idea of Atman within although Atman is one with Brahman, Atman is a soul that inhabits an individual body. Is that the idea in Hinduism? I'm not sure.
Essentially, yes. And the idea is the Atman, that we are in ignorance and deluded and thinking that our Atman is separate, and there's the Paramatman, and we've got the core statement, Tattva twamasi, that thou
Thou
art.
art
You
that,
are
yeah.
that, tat twam asi. So the idea of the individual soul, but which is not necessarily eternal, because ultimately it's the same as Brahman. And by delusion and ignorance, we think we're separate with the outturned gaze towards the world. But as it were, turning the gaze back in, you find that you are not the same separate soul that you thought. And the more you get into it, I know I'm sticking my neck out here a bit, but I think we get stuck a bit on matters of vocabulary and disputes over words. I think as you go further into Buddhist doctrine, further into Hindu teachings, especially Advaita Vedanta teachings, and the more you progress, the more it appears to be kind of arguments about words, that the reality behind it. I mean, there's got to be only one reality. You can't have two realities because people think different things. There is the one reality behind it. The differences between Hinduism and Buddhism kind of start to evaporate, and the higher you get. I'm carefully watching Chris's body language there because Chris, of course, knows a great deal more about Advaita Vedanta than me. But overall, would you agree, Chris?
Yes,
The more you get into them, the more these differences are matters of words and human interpretation behind it all, where the differences evaporate virtually.
Yes, I get a scholarly article once a day from various sources. As you say, there's a raging debate which has been going on for centuries between Buddhist and Hindu scholars. But what you say is completely correct, James. At the end of the day, it all seems to be a matter of clarity of definition.
Yeah.
The higher or the deeper you push it, the more it seems to be the case that there is a unified reality, but it's a of perception and interpretation and conceptualization, which gives birth to endless argument.
Well, I'm
The
relieved to
quote.
hear you say that. Thank you, Chris. Sorry, Barry. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just thinking that the quote from the old Zen masters that I find most helpful in that is Huang Po. At the beginning, there is only the one mind, apart from which nothing is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that sort of embodies the whole thing.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a very sort
Well,
of.
I mean, that statement of Huang Po, who had been a favorite of mine ever since I was 22.
And me as well, since I was 17.
Well,
But
17, you beat me to it by 5 years.
the Blofeld translation, is that the one?
John Blofeld's exactly that one, yes. Yeah. But I think that what Barry has just cited there, I think would be totally acceptable to an Advaita Vedantist, would it not, Chris? Yeah. So
Yes.
there we've got the Advaita Vedanta and Huang Po. I mean that there's just the one mind is that there we are. It's that there is no distinction between even here in terms of language.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife is still with a school of Advaita Vedanta, and her tutor,
Sorry, your wife is still, I didn't catch?
my wife is still with a school of Advaita Vedanta. And we were lucky enough to be able to entertain her tutor, who's a senior lady in that particular organisation, and she put it quite succinctly. I think it's horses for courses in terms of conceptual understanding.
Yeah.
Sort of taste or which direction to take your spiritual practices, but ultimately there is the one truth.
So you mentioned, Chris, the raging arguments, and things that as soon as you get raging arguments, of course, you find that people are no longer interested in the truth; they're interested in the position that they've built.
The papers I'm saying can usually contain very interesting diagrams of how people perceive soul or identity and your conception of self. And the thing is that we intuitively have a feeling of individual self, and that tends to sort of blur things.
Yeah,
it's difficult for the mind to get around its inherent conviction that we are separate, distinct individuals with separate, distinct selves. Whereas, and that's only a relative perspective, though. The further that one can transcend that, the more that the realization comes that there is only just the one universal flow of consciousness, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, yeah. So I suppose in this particular case, we were halted in our tracks here by Barry's query as to the Buddhist orthodoxy of the way we were putting it. But subject to all of those cautions, and with that helpful comment you've just made, Chris, about this intuitive sense of a soul, it's much more, they're much less shy about it in the Bhagavad Gita. But okay, let's try to get rid of our shyness and say, well, okay, well, for these purposes, we can kind of talk about something in the human being that will carry on. I mean, it's the same way as you were saying. It's a process. Barry mentioned the process, and that example is given in the questions of King Melinda, actually, about a candle. You light one candle from another. Is it the same flame or not?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is kind of neither yes nor no, but it's a continuing process. And am I the same as I was 60 years ago, and even am I the same as I was a week ago, or even before I turned on my Zoom a few minutes ago? The answer is, well, interesting question. It doesn't have a yes or no answer.
I still wouldn't be using the word soul, though, because I think that has got an implication that takes it outside of Buddhism.
Yes, okay.
Whatever this bundle of stuff we're talking about is, if you're talking about an embodied soul, that implies something really different to an embodied being.
Yeah.
And the other advantage of the Buddhist way of looking at things, James, is that it gives you considerable scope for avoidance of accountability.
It does, actually. I've spent several years of my life, years and years ago, as a barrister doing a lot of criminal work. It's not a defence I ever risked running in court. But we did often run the thing about, he's a changed man now, been through this and that, and a reformed character. But actually, it's a different person. So no, that wouldn't work. But to say what the great change has been, that would often work.
Did you know Christmas Humphreys, James? He was a barrister as well, wasn't he?
He
was a judge, wasn't he? He was a High Court judge.
Sorry?
He was a High Court judge, wasn't he, Christmas Humphreys?
He became a circuit judge he became an Old Bailey judge, which is virtually the same status, not quite a High Court judge. So he remained doing criminal work all of his life. But yes, I did. In fact, my very first introduction to Buddhism was his Penguin book, the Penguin book Buddhism, which I got in early 1965, because precious little else available then.
Except his book, Teach Yourself Zen, A Way of Life, which was my early introduction.
Is that right? Okay, which I also have, yes. He was a great fan of mine.
Yellow and black book.
And then, in fact, I did have to, and I met him several times because years and years ago in the 70s, when we were setting up the Zen Trust, he was closely involved with that. But yes, there he was. He was a criminal barrister, and then became an Old Bailey judge.
Yeah. Sorry, James, wasn't he counsel for Crown for Ruth Ellis?
He was indeed. He was prosecuting counsel for the Crown at the trial for murder of Ruth Ellis, who was the last woman in England to be hanged for murder. Actually, as a little anecdotal aside, it wasn't as if there was a brutal performance by Christmas Humphreys. In fact, this was probably, it might be on record as the shortest cross-examination in a murder case that's ever taken place, because the question was, when you fired the gun, did you intend to kill him? She answered yes. And then he sat down. So literally his cross-examination was just that one question. Because as a matter of law, the way the law stood then, the answer yes to that question automatically meant a guilty verdict. It had to. But he was a very benign kind of fellow, despite being prosecuting counsel in many cases.
He actually got into some difficulty and trouble with the media at one point because he was too lenient, people felt, on a rapist. Do you remember that?
Yeah, there was. That's right. It was a rape case, I think, where he was a bit over lenient with the convicted rapist. And I think feminism was on the rise then. It was sort of, he's just being a male chauvinist judge going easy on the rapist. But yeah, he did. Dear old Christmas Humphreys. Mm.
Yeah. James, just as a quick aside, is there any, in English common law, is there anything equivalent to the French crime of passion? My understanding is that Ruth Ellis might have got away with it had she been tried in France.
The crime de passion. Actually, it's kind of the same result through a slightly different route. If there are circumstances where you can demonstrate that the balance of your mind was disturbed. That can, for example, in the case of murder, it's not a complete defense, but it reduces murder to manslaughter. But so it's in other crimes again. Okay, it's a mitigation rather than a defense. Defense is guilty, not guilty, whereas a mitigation, guilty but, and then strong mitigation. So it goes to what the sentence is going to be rather than whether you're guilty or not guilty.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Take that with caution because I was last in a criminal court in 1979. Anyway, so back to also rising out of our deha. So that deha, see if my pen's working again. It is now. Deha, sharira, and kaya. These are three words, all meaning body, as in the regular human body. But they all have their own meanings. Their own meanings that appear from the root. So from deha, it's from a root meaning something that can be fashioned or made or molded. Rather like dough in the sense of water, flour mixed with water can be molded. And by an entertaining bit of etymology, our English word dough is actually from that same root, because water, you can't mold water, you can't mold flour, mix them together and it becomes something you can mold into shape. So deha and do are from that same root. So the word deha is by its root pretty much explicitly indicates the physical thing. So the dehin is the risk of using complement the soul, but whatever thing or non-thing comes into it's why it's called this being, whatever we are beyond the body. So whatever we conceive ourselves to be other than the body. So we are the dehin, the possessor of the body. The other word, sharira, it is from the root shri, meaning to lean against or to be supported by, to support yourself against, or to lie in, rest in something. So the sharira has the idea of the support, the basis in which whatever it is that comes back in can rest or be supported by. And the etymology, as we know, the sh sound in in Sanskrit, very often turns up as the k sound in Greek and Latin. So the shri of Sanskrit, is the kli in Greek, from which we get klinik. You see, the klinos is a bed, something that you lie down on, and a clinic is a place where there are beds, therefore a place for the sick. So it's all from that root, lying down or resting against. So the sharira is that in which this, for want of a better word, embodied spirit rests. The most frequent word you find, certainly in the Buddhist Pali Sutras, for a body is kaya. And kaya actually comes from the root chi, meaning to heap up or to pile up. And the ch becomes a ko when you make the verbal noun, so that makes the kaya, which literally means the accumulation. So the word kaya looks at the body not as one kind of monolithic whole, but as a body as an accumulation of parts that all operate together. It is the accumulation. Incidentally, with the vichi, chi, so chi means to heap up. Vichi, it makes the verbal noun vichaya, and many of you will be familiar with the Pali term Dhammavichaya, which is often translated as analysis or investigation of phenomena. This vichaya, in fact, it's one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. The Dhammavichaya is an important doctrinal word. So the Dhammavichaya, the analysis of phenomena, and is chaya, heaping up, vichaya, unheaping, deconstructing, taking something apart to see how it works. So this Dhammavichaya, the analysis of phenomena or investigation of phenomena, it's like deconstructing, a reverse engineering. You deconstruct something, take it to bits to see what it really is and how it works. So that's these 3 words for body: the deha, the thing that is fashioned or molded; the sharira, the support; and the kaya, the accumulation. So,
Sir, in Sinhala, Deha we call for the dead body, and the Sharira for living body.
I'm sorry, what was the dead body?
Deha.
Hmm?
Deha.
Okay, right, yes, okay. So yeah, the
Living body is like our we call Sharira.
okay, that's interesting. Is that how you would do it in Sinhala?
Yes, even that somebody's dead body in the pal, they say that Deha is kept in the pala like that. They write like that. They don't
Okay.
keep the bodies in the pala. They say Deha in the pala.
Now that's interesting. That's really interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that shows, Shinimala, that in modern Sinhala, well, they use a lot of these Sanskrit and Pali words. In modern Sinhala, you intuitively recognize that the deha is not the person. The deha is simply the thing that has a shape, that has a molded form.
Yes,
but it's the dehin is the entire person in the deha. But the deha then is just, so that's what you cremate. And the sharira, with its word meaning that which is the support for what? That life is still in it. It's the support for life. So that's interesting. So deha is the dead body, sharira the living body. I'm glad you mentioned that. And did you use the word kaya in Sinhala for a body?
No, but kaya is coming in the prayers only, Buddhist Pali prayers, kaya.
Okay, right. So in the Pali scriptures, the kaya is the most commonly used word for the body. For
Yeah.
example, in the Satipatthana Sutta, the major sutta on meditation practice, when they talk
Kaya
about
vacha.
body mindfulness, the word used is also always kaya. How is the body
Yeah.
disposed? You have the kaya gata sati, the literally body gone mindfulness. That's mindfulness with regard to the body.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting also, James, that my wife and I were discussing the Tibetan traditions approach towards the disposal of the body subsequent to death. I should say, subsequent to death. In that, yes, I believe that it's the case that the body must be laid undisturbed for 3 days at least, minimum, before cremation. I understand that it complicates the onward journey of whatever you take the life force to be, as it seeks re-embodiment. So that there's obviously a connection between the life energy and the form in which it takes. And even in death of that physical form, some consideration has to be given to just how you deal with that corpse. And I believe that into the Tibetan process, though, as I say, you've got to leave it undisturbed for 3 days minimum.
Exactly so. But whether you'd be successful in having that wish granted if you ended your life in an NHS hospital, for example, is
not in an NH hospital, but when one of our lamas died a couple of years ago, when he died of a heart attack, the medics were called out and they were told to leave the body afterwards, and it was left.
Yeah,
where he died for 3 days.
Well, was he fortunate enough to be in a position where the body could be left undisturbed?
I mean, yes, he died in his own home.
Okay,
the medics turned up, they didn't whisk him off, so it would be much harder if they'd put him in a bed, in a ward. That would have not been possible, I guess.
It would not have been.
But it's 49 days in the bardo. But I think the first 3 days are the ones where if you're a realised enough practitioner, that's your opportunity to kind of liberate yourself. So if the body's messed around with it, sort of, I think the idea is it sort of pulls you back to the body and interferes with that process.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Those of us who are less realised spend 49 days being chucked all over the place till we find another rebirth in another body.
Yeah.
Whatever we are.
Back to our text. Yadi to switchayas di sarveshame hinam. So the first line is if that this were the case, and then the second line is that then that would be the result. So if in this first line, by the way, the equivalent of the verb to be is missing, that's fine. Word if by one's own wish. And then we have to supply something. There were what? Siddhi, success, accomplishment, getting what you want. Sarveshameva dehinam, for all dehins, without exception. If that were the case, that you could have that simply by wishing it, then the result is nabhavet. This is the optative form, so here it has a conditional sense. If what is stated in the first line were correct, if we could all get what we want simply by wishing for it, then nabhavet, there would not be dukkam kasyachit. There would not be dukkha for anybody. Here's dukkha of anybody, is just how it's expressed in Sanskrit. So nobody would suffer from dukkha. Nabhavet dukkam kasyachit. There would not be dukkha of anybody. And this, by the way, chit at the end of an interrogative. So kah, who, kashchit means anybody. It turns it into indefinite. Kada, when, kadachit, any time. So kasya, of whom, kasyachit, of anybody. So nobody would have dukkha. Na dukkam kashchid ishchati. Ichchati. This is the nominative form, kaha, followed by chit. So by Sanskrit comes kashchit, means anybody. So na kashchit, nobody. Na kashchit, in English word order, na kashchit ichchati dukkam. Not anybody wants dukkha.
Can I just ask a question about where the condition ends and where the result starts? Because in the one of the translations I looked at, and I actually looked at the Tibetan as well, just to see, because just by way of comparison, it was sort of implying that the condition is just the first half of that first line. So yadi tu svechaya siddhi, that if from self-wish there were accomplishment, comma, among all beings there would not be suffering for any of them.
Oh.
Rather than it being an accomplishment for all beings. It stops with the accomplishment, if you see what I mean. The Tibetan certainly reads that way. The Tibetan translation of it.
So in other words,
because it's sort of following on from the previous verse, which is about, people are the products of dependent origination. Then their volitional actions aren't what makes things happen.
Do you mean it? We would have it. Let's put there. So condition. Yadi tu switchya siddhi.
Yeah. If accomplishment. If by self-wish there were accomplishments. Or if things were accomplished by wishing it.
That's the if, and then the whole of the rest of it is the result. If it was a, let's just see if that were. I'm not sure. Yadi tu switchya siddhi. Result sarvesham evadehanam bhavavet kasyachit dukkam. It doesn't work.
Why not?
It doesn't work because Yadi tu switchya siddhi, if there were accomplishment by one's own wish, okay, so far so good, that works on its own. Nabhavet sarvesham evadehanam nabhavet kasyachit dukkam. So what does the bhavet do? There would not be dukkam for whom? Kasyachit, for anybody.
But could it not be something like
Sarvesham evadehinam and kasyachit would stand in the same grammatical and equational grammatical relationship to each other. So it's a plural which quarrels with the singular there.
But isn't it the sense of among all living beings, not any one of them would suffer?
Sarvesham evadehinam nabhavet kasyachit dukkam.
So if we took the Sarve Sameva Dehinam as being of or among all embodied beings.
Okay, then maybe that could work. I think it's slightly ingenious, but yes, the more I look at it, the more I think it could work.
Because the Tibetan, when it's translated in Tibetan, they translate it as something like if it was the first bit. I haven't quite worked out the translation of it, but it's the bit about if self-liberation, if you're able to do things by wishing, because no one would wish for dukkha. All body possessors, dukkha wouldn't arrive for them. So it's actually the sentence is restructured in that way so that it's clear.
Okay, Paladin, you have converted me. The answer is yes. It could be read either of two ways. So, sarvesham so yadi tu switchya siddhi. If siddhi arose, accomplishment, getting what you want, were by switchaya, were by one's own volition, simple wanting it. Sarvesham evadehanam nabhavet kasyachit dukkam. Okay, yes, okay, I'm converted. Answer is yes, I agree. You can read it either way. the more I look at it, the more I think actually, yes, that they're probably equally valid.
Well, obviously, I'm biased towards the Tibetan translation being the right one. So,
yeah, the Tibetan. I've just got which Tibetan translation have you got there?
I don't know. I've just got the Tibetan. The version I've got's got the Sanskrit and the Tibetan, so I was trying to translate it from the Tibetan.
Oh, you were reading it in the Tibetan.
Yes.
Oh, very good. You see, you've got one. You're one up on us. So indeed, several steps up on us if you're reading it in the Tibetan now.
Well, my Tibetan's a bit basic, but I know enough to know that the way that the sentence is structured, it's the conditionals. Yeah.
Okay, right.
It's got clear markers to where the conditional clause ends, if then, and it would end after the city, or the equivalent word of city.
Okay, right. So they've got so there are kind of separate grammatical markers to say end of condition, result of condition.
Yeah, so if it's galte is if, and then it ends in the locative for the end of the conditional clause. It's if then.
Okay, right. So there's no doubt, but that is how the Tibetan breaks it down then. The answer is yes. I would say both are equally valid. Do you know? I'm even beginning to think it might be better. Even beginning to think that the Tibetan one is better because
well, I'm very flattered that my argument was that convincing, James, and that you've.
No, because now you look Sarvesham eva dehinam. If you yadi to switch a siddhi, Sarvesham eva dehinam, this emphatic Sarvesham eva dehinam, out of all beings without any exception, none would suffer dukkha. I am fully converted. Not only do I now acknowledge that both are valid, I've come round to the thinking that the Tibetans have got this better in interpretation than I had.
Because you don't necessarily always wish things for all beings, do you? You could just be wishing not to suffer for yourself. And
yeah.
So it seemed a bit muddled to have all the all beings in with the accomplishments.
Yeah. Because we're talking about unenlightened beings as well. And I have encountered more than one unenlightened being in my time who wishes well for himself, but not necessarily for others. Have you ever encountered anyone like that? So yeah, thank you, Paladin. You have persuaded certainly me that that is in fact a better in interpretation. Maybe I was kind of slightly thrown by the fact that normally you have an idea embodied in a line and then the corresponding counterpart idea in the next line. But here we've just got the break is the pada. Yadisu switcha siddhi sarveshame dehinam nabhavet kasyatid dukkam. Yeah. There we are. Thank you for that.
Thanks. Just a quick one. Is the Visaga in Siddhi? How is the Visaga in Siddhi pronounced? Is it Siddhi ha, or just as the no need for the ha?
Okay. The normal rule is that where you have the Visarga at the end of a word, end of a sentence, end of verse, and end of a word group, it's pronounced with a shadow vowel. So siddhihi, not siddhiha, siddhihi. It's the same vowel as preceding. So the ihi, buddhaha, viharaha, siddhihi.
Siddhi.
Yeah, so it will be the e. But here it's not at the end, it's the end of a pada, but still within the line. So you wouldn't have the shadow vowel. So yaditu switcher siddhi sarvesham eva dehinam. You don't have the shadow vowel there because it's immediately followed in the same line by another word. You only have the shadow vowel, as they say, at the end of a line, at the or sentence, end of a word group.
Right, good, thank you.
And also, you do have in Vedic pronunciation, where you have the Visarga before a s. It tends to be pronounced as a double s. So in classical Sanskrit, yaditu switchaya siddhi sarvesham. In Vedic, it would have been yaditu switchaya siddhis sarvesham. It would be with you'd pronounce a double s. But by classical Sanskrit, it tended to be pronounced separately as a visarga. Okay, let's get back to that.
Could I just ask one other small grammatical point? You mentioned that one of the words was in optative form. I've not come across that expression. Could you explain that?
The optative form, it's when it's bhavet. Now, the indicative form, simply a statement of fact, it would be bhavati. The optative form, it's varies. It can be a kind of conditional or expressing a general idea, or it may be so, could be so, would be so. You have the ending et instead of ati, so bhavet.
So it's a sort of conditional. It's just that I've not come across that word before, optative.
Ah, okay. Do you have a copy of the Macdonell's Sanskrit grammar?
No.
Right. Actually, I can't remember whether I told my Sanskrit students that you should all equip yourselves with a copy of Macdonell's Sanskrit grammar for students. I've certainly told my Pali students that they should have it, because so many points of Pali grammar you can only really understand properly if you refer back to Sanskrit.
I think you said it a long time ago, James.
I did, but a long time ago, did I, Kath? Okay.
Yes.
I am going to send out a note with my group email, which will get to you tomorrow, because I have to shoot out straight after this. In my group email tomorrow, I shall tell you about the Macdonell Sanskrit grammar that you should all have. I think it's available online. I think it's freely available online. But anyway, Barry, I don't know if you...
Just to say, James, because I had a job finding it in Rappel's Sanskrit textbook, she doesn't use the word optative. She describes it as the potential mood.
Okay, fine. That's fine. Rappel is it's a very good kind of course, a graded course in Sanskrit. Macdonell's Sanskrit grammar for students is a reference grammar. It was, in fact, the edition I have published quite a while ago. When did she? Preface to the third edition was 1926. I know, 1911. Okay. The preface to the second edition was July 1911. But it remains an extraordinarily useful grammar. It's not full of complications, very, very clearly set out. It's called Sanskrit Grammar for Students. And Macdonell does have, A. Macdonell, Arthur Anthony Macdonell, had a genius for just setting things out very clearly, even though he was, late Victorian and Edwardian Oxford academic. He did manage to set things out very, very clearly indeed. You may have seen, those of you who have looked down ever at the notes, I've often say C. Macdonell, and that's the work to which I refer, C. Macdonell, in paragraph 119 in this particular case. So I will send out a note enjoining you to equip yourselves, at least to be able to find. I'm not sure, is it still available online? Do you know, Paladin?
I have a difficulty. I was going to ask you, when you send your note, if you could please put the link, because I used to have it, and twice it disappeared, and I
Oh.
can't get it back.
Didn't you get her
And
phone then?
and it's much easier to refer to it
It is.
online that in the text.
Okay.
If you have it.
I will
Yeah.
just. I'll do my best then. It'll be tomorrow morning now. I'll do my best to
Yeah.
research which is the best one, and I'll send you all the link to it.
Thank you. Yeah.
MacG
Thank you.
on.
James, was MacDonnell by any chance a colleague or a contemporary of Molly Williams?
He took over from Moni Williams. Moni Williams had been the Bowden Professor of Sanskrit at Oxford. And I'm not quite sure if there was a gap between, but either immediately after or a short time after Moni Williams either died or retired, MacDonnell was elected Bowden Professor of Sanskrit at Oxford. So he took over from him.
Wow.
Moni Williams was he was the one who did the really the heavy duty Moni Williams dictionary for example, which we still use, which is fully searchable online. MacDonnell was all for making things much easier and more accessible for students, so he did his MacDonnell Sanskrit grammar for students. He also did a dictionary, is much thinner, much more concise, but is an ideal dictionary for beginners of Sanskrit to use. I've got a lot of time for dear old A.A. MacDonnell. He did a huge amount to open it up and make the entire process of Sanskrit learning easier for students. And in fact, it was years and years later that Richard Gombrich took over that same chair under the Bowden Professor of Sanskrit at Oxford. So this explains the numerous references to MacDonnell that you will see in my notes. So we'll have a couple of recitations of this. Unless there are any further queries or comments arising out of this verse? Okay, let's start. Would you like to start, Barry, to give us a recitation?
Yeah. Yaditu svechaya siddhi sarvesham eva dehinam nabhavet kashyachid dukham na dukham kasyid ichati.
Okay, right. One very minor point. Could you just repeat this last part again?
Na dukham kasyid ichati.
Okay. I think you pronounce that as an M, M for Mike. Because it's the anuswara followed by a k, it would have a m sound.
Yeah, but I tried to do that, but obviously I didn't succeed.
You were misled by it being written as an M, albeit a subdotted M in Roman.
Yeah.
But it would be pronounced as on its own, of course, dukham with a m sound, but with the following k, dukham kashchit. Okay, thank you. Medlin, round to you.
Yes. Yadi tu sveshaya siddhi sarveshameva dehinam na bhavet kasyachit dukham na dukham kasyachit ichati.
Okay, right. This double ch sound you pronounced very correctly there, but it came as more like a sveshaya, svechaya, swechaya.
Svechaya.
Exactly
Svechaya.
so. Swechaya.
Well,
so this ch sound. So let me get the iPad here. Swechaya. because this is the sound that's, because unaspirated ch, aspirated ch. But remember, this ch is of itself two sounds. It's the beginning part of a t followed by a sh sound. That is why, so in French, for example, this is pronounced as a sh. And in French, if you want to make a ch sound, the French writers is a tch, recognizing it's in fact a t, ch, ch. When you are pronouncing it double, what happens is, let's just put it in phonetic script. That's a t, and this is the phonetic sound, phonetic symbol for sh. When you're pronouncing it double, what happens is you actually double the t part of it. So swit chaya, you hold it for double, but the doubled bit that you hold is the t sound, swit chaya, swit chaya. So if you wanted to write it in French, you double the t, and that's for the sh, and that's for the aspiration. So swit chaya. If you're transliterating into French, it would be like that. Swit chaya. Okay, good. Oh, where are we? Paladin, we'll make sure you recite rather before you have to shoot off.
Yade tu svechaya siddhi sarvesha meva dehinam na bhavet kasya chid dukham na dukham kaschidit chati.
Right.
Dehinam.
You fell into the trap that so often we do as English speakers of not giving the full long a value. Dehinam, dehinam, dehinam.
Dehinam.
Okay, very good. Also, another point I was saying to Barry, this anuswara before the k, duhkan kashchit. Equally, you've got the anuswara before a n there. So in that circumstance, the anuswara is pronounced exactly like the following n, as if it's a double n. Duhkanna. You wouldn't say duhkamna, but duhkanna. Written as the anuswara, but pronounced as a double n. So nabhaved kasyachid duhkanna duhkan kashchid ichati. Okay, Chris, would you like to have a go?
Yaditu swechaya siddhi sawesam ewa dahinam.
So dehinam.
Oh, dehinam.
Dehinam.
Na bhavet kasyachit dukhan na dukhang kashchit ichati.
Okay, very good, Chris. Kath, round to you.
Yaditu svechaya siddhi sarveshameva dehinam na bhavet kasyachid dukham na dukham kaschirichati.
Very good. Thank you, Kath. Thank you. And finally, Shri Animala, round to you.
Yaditu swechaya siddhihi sarveshameva dehinam nabbe taksha chiddi dukkam kaschit dichati.
Okay, right. There was a bit of a stumble in say nabhavet kasyachid dukkam. Nabhavet
kasya siddhi dukkam.
Exactly so. Very good. Okay. Thank you, Srinamala. So we've got a few minutes in which we can go on to verse 35. But before we do any further comments or queries on 34, we can deal with them now.
I'll slope off at this point, James. Can I just ask when we're starting again after Easter?
Oh, yeah, we were going. I think it's when did I put it? 3 weeks from today, I think. So there's
Okay.
we normally wouldn't be having one next week anyway. Then it's Good Friday, so it'll be the. I'll put it in the. I think it's three weeks from today.
Right.
I'm
Thanks, James.
restarting.
I'll see you whenever it is. Thanks for
Okay, right then.
Pramada.
Okay. Oh, sorry, what's my place again? Yeah. Pramadadatmanatmanam badhante kantakadhibhi bhaktachedadibhi kopadurapastriyadilipsaya. Read it again. Pramadadatmanatmanam badhante kantakadhibhi bhaktachedadibhi kopadurapastriyadilipsaya. So badhante is the it's an atmanate middle voice verb. Badhante, the root bad means to oppress or to torment. So badhante, they oppress or they torment. They torment themselves. Atmanam. Atmanam is the accusative of atma, root atman. Atmanam is the accusative. The badhante, they oppress atmanam, themselves. Note in particular, importantly, and it's the same in Pali as well, atma, atman stem, atma nominative, atmanam accusative. It has its meaning of the, as we were just discussing, the atma, the paramatma, often translated as the soul. It also has just a very ordinary meaning of the reflexive pronoun, meaning oneself. So if you just like, you hurt yourself, you use the word atma in Sanskrit and Pali for that. It's not making a comment about the atma being tormented. It's simply used as the reflexive pronoun, nothing to do with the atma as philosophically understood. Note also that when atma is used in that sense, it is always used in the singular. So in English, we would say they torment themselves. We'd use it in the plural. In Sanskrit and Pali, when it's used as a reflexive pronoun, you hurt oneself, it's always used in the singular, even though the verb is plural. The subject is plural. So that accounts for the plural verb, badhante, but the singular atmanam, self. So they torment themselves. Atmana, that is the instrumental form. So by oneself or by themselves, they torment themselves. So in other words, they're doing it to themselves, and the cause of it is themselves. They're tormenting themselves by or through themselves. In other words, they have the complete agency, nobody else's fault. They're doing it to themselves, but by themselves. How pramadat? So you're going to put this into the T because it's up. Without Sandhi, it's the T. So this is pramada.
I'm sorry, James. I've got to go.
Okay, Kath.
Thank
okay.
you. See you next time.
See you next time round. Bye then, Kath.
Bye.
Yeah. So we're a couple of minutes from having to wind up anyway. This, I'm not sure. I know that I've explained it in great detail to my Pali classes, but the meaning of this word pramada is a word of pramada and its negation. Apramada is a word of fundamental importance in Buddhism. You may have heard me say before, if there were a competition for the most important single word that the Buddha said in his entire teaching, his entire 45 years of teaching, we could say that it is pamada in its negated form, apamada. My reason to justifying that statement, is supporting that statement, is that the very last words that the Buddha is recorded as saying, it was in Pali, of course, but almost the same as in Pali. It's Vayadhamma Sankara Samadena Sampadeta. This is Sampadeta, often as strive on, but strive on how? Pramadena in Sanskrit would be apramadena. So it's the same word pramada, but negated. Apramadena. So this word is the one word that the Buddha chose is on his deathbed, is to how we should live, how you strive, how you live. Apramadena, Sanskrit apramadena. So pramada, in Pali, pramada, is it embodies everything that's the opposite of mindfulness, getting carried away, getting excited, acting unwisely, unskillfully, unmindfully. All of that is summarized in pramada. The root of the word is mad, which originally in older Sanskrit meant something like exuberant joy, but then by extension, kind of exuberant activity where you're carried away by emotion. It could include the emotion of anger, not just the emotion of joy. So you lose your mindfulness and you get carried away by whatever impulse, getting impulsively carried away. It's the opposite of everything that we understand by smriti, in Pali sati, meaning mindfulness. So they torment themselves by themselves. Why? Pramadat. This is the ablative of cause, out of pramada. We use the same expression in English. You do something, you speak out of anger. So it's the same, and it's exactly like that in Sanskrit. This is the ablative, pramadat, out of pramada. They act from pramada. How do I translate it? Through intoxication, heedlessness. Badante kantakadipi. Kantaka means a thorn. There's no ordinary word meaning a thorn, as in a sharp thorn on a thorn bush. Adi, with thorns and so on, and such, and similar things. The word adi, the actual meaning of that word on its own is beginning. But when it's at the end of a compound, as here, kantaka, it means etc. Means a list of things beginning with thorns. So thorns and such like things. And this is the instrumental plural. So kantakadhibi, they torment themselves with thorns and such like things.
James, I've had clients with lifelong psychological problems that have been totally unable to see that they do it to themselves. They're tormenting themselves with their own thought processes, which are incoherent or fundamentally wrong thinking. But the client just simply can't see that they are the victim of their own thought processes. They're doing it to themselves.
So did you start by saying you had a difficulty?
I've had clients in the past with long-term, lifelong psychological problems who've been unable to see that they're doing it to themselves.
Okay, right. Well, this is exactly the point that's being made here, and you can have it through a psychological problem, but here it's explicitly by pramada, by effectively by lack of skillful mindfulness and wisdom. But because of that lack, then you are in fact doing it to yourself.
Yes.
You're doing it to yourself, and equally, the doctrine goes, you have the agency to stop doing it, to rectify that.
Yes.
So
it's like slapping yourself in the face and then looking around to find the other party that you believe did it.
It's a very similar, exactly so, and that's explicitly the point that's being made here. They're tormenting themselves by themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, they're doing it through their own agency to themselves. So I'll have to shoot off now. It's just gone 3. So I will bid you all a happy Easter then. Thank you for joining me, and we will resume. I'll confirm the date in the group email that I send. It might be tonight, but certainly no later than tomorrow morning. I'll send out the group email, and with the link to the great Arthur Anthony MacDonnell.
Thank you. Happy
Okay.
Easter.
Thank you, and happy Easter to you all. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Bye.